Hi there. So this video is meant to address or talk more about the drive-by supervision, and I hesitate to even say that because drive-by supervision is not supervision. And I think that's an important message for you to take away from this video, and maybe we've already talked about it. So this is just an opportunity to speak more in depth about that and encourage you to think more about your own personal practice. Many agencies, and maybe you in particular, have informal open door or drop-in practices. These are usually not necessarily procedures or policies, but I think that most people really aspire to have or cultivate that idea that there is this sort of openness or availability. This video is meant to remind you to really be intentional about what or why you offer that to your supervisees. It's really important, I think, for all of your staff, and particularly for your individual supervisees, to think about and to define what is a crisis. What are the criteria for your supervisees to use the drop-in or to be in touch between supervision meetings? Certainly we want supervisees to feel safe or comfortable to be able to reach out to you, but we also want them to really build that capacity to wait, to be able to do some self-reflection or self-supervision, to be able to address some of the issues that may be coming up for them. We really also want to focus on helping staff to identify the difference between a crisis and hard stuff. And for some of you, you may have a lot of green staff or new staff who are new to the field, who are less confident about their work, who have legitimate questions about whether it's a 51A, whether it's safety, etc. And of course, in a situation where a 51A or a mandated reporting issue is at a hand, we want them to reach out. That should be a clear definition of the time that of course you want your staff to be consulting with you. But really working with your staff to identify what hard stuff is and what a crisis is. And I think that to sort of be really intentional about it is essential. I want you to track your frequent flyers. Oftentimes in the previous cohorts, I've heard about in coaching and mentoring about particular staff who I think this is probably hyperbole, but that come by every day, the door is open, they come in to talk about something, and there's a difference between saying hello and building a relationship with somebody than somebody who's always like, oh, but let me tell you about this, let me tell you about that. They think it's going to take 5 minutes, it takes half an hour, etc. We really want you to really think about what you're signaling to your staff about their own competence, about their own ability to manage the work, to manage stress, etc. And to think about then, like when you're having a conversation with them, I'd also encourage you to think about parallel process. Are they actually communicating with you about something that's happening in the home or happening with the family or a parent or a child? What's happening for them that they cannot wait? And to really address this together, think about it with your supervisee, about ways that they may help themselves, feel support, etc., but also really addressing their ability to manage both stress and questions in appropriate ways. Oftentimes when I talk about this, I want to bring up that we need to think about concerns that you might have about potentially limiting availability or access. Sometimes it's the work that we have to do about that. I already said that we have to be thinking about what signal we're sending about competence, a supervisee's competence, but what does it mean for us to really set that boundary essentially, or to limit it? And is there something in your past experience as a supervisee where your supervisor was never available? So you're like, I'm always going to be available. Is that driving your thinking or practice about being available for the drop-in or the drive-by? For many of you, for some of you, this is going to be a challenge to adjust your practice. I do think it's really important if you're shifting your practice to talk to your staff, your supervisees about this. I imagine for some of you, especially those of you who have been clinicians or direct care workers in the past, like you may have said this to a family or a parent or a child, like if you're going to change the rules, like let's let them know that we're changing the rules. Don't just change your practice and not inform your staff about that. When we reduce the drive-by, when we actually shift our practice, we need to remember that even makes regularity and the consistency of your supervision time more important. I think this is also a good time to remind you that the drive-by does not replace supervision. I've heard often like, well, this, this supervisee stops by 3 times a week, so I don't need to meet with her regularly, because you're sort of counting on those times. But crisis supervision is not necessarily the best supervision. I really want to encourage you to think about the regularity and consistency, and maybe it's because you are regular and consistent in your practice, you'll reduce the drive-bys just by really attending to that. Thanks.